Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner. Today we're taking a look at my reading stats for April. We had a far more mixed month than normal during April as well. So, first off, we read a total of 12 books. We had a bigger mix than normal as well of audio to physical to ebooks. So in total we have 2,641 pages, or just a little bit over 28 and a half hours. As normal, you can see we're back into dark, although only half fell under the dark category, with tense coming second place. But we had a fair few mix all across the board this month. In terms of pace, 71% were medium pace compared to 2 fast pace. That's largely because we had a number of non-fiction this month. In terms of page numbers, we had 4 under 300 pages, 3 between 300 and 499, and 1 over 500 pages. And in terms of audio book length, we had 4 in total. 1 was under 8 hours, the other 3 were between 8 and 16. And we read 3 non-fiction books this month compared to 9 fiction. 5 of our books came under fantasy, with 3 with the LGBTQIA plus tag, 2 fell under romance, then everything else fell under a mix of dystopian, erotica, classics, YA, thriller, politics, manga, literary fiction, horror, history, and autobiography. We had 5 digital books this month, which is the most for a while, 4 audiobooks and 3 physical books. And we have a good mix over of all the ratings as well, with 1 coming in at 2.25, 1 at 3 stars, 2 at 3.5, 1 at 3.75, 2 at 4 stars, 4 at 4.25 stars, and 1 at 4.5 stars. And in terms of pages to minute, it's been a very up and down month actually in terms of my reading habits. But with all that said, let's look at what I actually read this month. So we started off April with Quinton Lee's Chrysalis and Requiem. This is a dark academia fantasy with a side serving of a sapphic romance. We follow Veer Rosal as she discovers what's happened involving the murder of one of her school friends and repressed memories of a previous school friend that was murdered as well, as she tries to find some answers for what's really going on. This is a really densely written fantasy novel that at times left me feeling really disorientated because I didn't have enough information on the world at large. That being said, I did still enjoy it well enough, but I really do not think this is a novel for everyone. I think a lot of people would struggle with this, and the other Goodreads reviews that I've seen sort of bear this out. I gave this a 3 stars out of 5. Moving on, we then have Unruly, a history of England's kings and queens, written and narrated by David Mitchell. This came out in 2023, and the audiobook was a little under 12 hours long. And this very much had the vibe of that old uncle who knows many things, telling you stories about history with a bit of a sardonic wit and sarcastic side points, which, if you've seen David Mitchell on TV, is entirely his MO. There was nothing particularly groundbreaking in terms of things that this revealed in terms of a historical sense. What really made this for me was the quips and the sarcastic musings of Mitchell. I think this would be a good listen for anyone with a passing interest in English history in terms of the monarchy. I gave this 4 stars out of 5. Another non-fiction is up next, and this is another release from 2023, written and narrated by journalist James O'Brien. How They Broke Britain. This book focuses on 10 individuals that James O'Brien believes have been instrumental in the breakdown of public trust in politicians in the UK and the mess of a political system we currently find ourselves in. It is worth noting that the majority of the people that are covered in this book, 10 in total, do sit on the right wing of British politics, but as the right wing has been in control of British politics for the majority of the last 40 years, you can argue that is perfectly sensible. But it is worth bearing in mind a mild left-wing bias going into this. That being said, the facts that are provided and how interconnected some of these characters are is just beyond mind-boggling to me. This is an interesting read in some of the individuals that have been prominent in British politics in the last 30 years and beyond, and is worth a listen if you have a curiosity about that. I gave this a 3.75 stars out of 5. I also read a yaoi graphic novel this month. This is MADK Volume 1 by Ryu Suzuri. And I'm going to be honest, I have a whole host of issues with this one. And I think of the yaoi that I've read so far and the BL that I've read so far, this is the one that really has driven home the fact that there are some significant issues with the terms of consent within the genre. There is some decent artwork in here, but there's also some very messy and very perhaps overly complicated artwork as well. The basic gist of this story is Makoto has been ostracized because of odd hobbies and for some weird sexual kinks, and ends up wanting to eat the flesh of a demon that they summon, and then their soul is taken away by said demon and basically turned into a slave in hell. It is very dark. This is definitely not one for me. I gave this a 2.25 stars out of 5. Then we get to ACOTAR. My full review is linked at the top for this one. In short, this is a fantasy fae romance story from Sarah J.Maas and is book 1 in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and a few people have mithered me to read this, and having read it, I can't say I'm glad that I did. This is the case of a book I don't totally get its popularity. It's not bad per se, but I have a whole host of issues with this that I've covered in my review, especially around the characters. That being said, I didn't have a terrible time with this, and it did, especially in the back half of the book, get more interesting to read. However, I couldn't give this more than a 3.5 stars out of 5, and I do not think I'll be following on the series. Next one, I need to deal with the elephant in the room first, and the author of the next book has been the source of some controversy online in the last few weeks. I'm not going to share any of it here, but if you want to look into that, I encourage you to do so. It is all online with documented evidence as well. So this will be the last of their books I will cover, which is a shame because I actually really enjoyed this one. This is Saint Sorrow Sinner, Book 3 of the Gideon Testaments by Freydis Moon. And this is in fact the conclusion of the trilogy. This one focuses around Sophia and Juniper, who are two new characters introduced here. But this does fetch back the duos from the previous two books. There is clearly a tier system in terms of who we get the most time with, as you would expect, Sophia and Juniper getting the most, followed by Colin and Taylor, with Bishop and Lincoln very much supporting cast only. But this is a fast-paced and interesting continuation and ending of the series, which left it just open enough for spin-off material if that was something that Freydis wished to do. If it hadn't been for the recent controversy, this would have been an easy recommend for me. I gave this a 4.25 stars out of 5, but as previously stated, I won't be reading any more of their stuff going forward after the recent revelations. Following that one, I read Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. This is a bit of a TikTok sensation, and I had a really good time with this one as well. It comes in at 362 pages long, and is a 2023 release, and is book 1 in the Ruinous Love series. I picked this up entirely because of the content warnings, which I thought were hilarious. And this is basically the story of two serial killers who hunt serial killers and end up falling in love. There is a lot of spice in here, about a quarter of the book I would say, especially in the last half, and it is very, very, very explicit. That being said, it's also quite a funny book. It's also quite gruesome, and it manages to balance those three aspects pretty well. I had a good time with this. I'm looking forward to book 2, which is out in the next couple of months. That's Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I gave this 4 stars. Next, we bounce back into audiobooks, and we have the classic story of 1984 by George Orwell. I listened to the audiobook version narrated by Ikemoto. It came in at just under 11 hours long. And it was a really, really good listen, and still to this day acts as a warning against the infringement of personal liberty by governments and when that goes too far. And it's amazing how pertinent some of the points made in this book are still today, 75 years later. As we follow the main character of Winston during his daily life in a totalitarian state where there is literally no personal liberty whatsoever. And the key thing with this book that I think really elevates it is this book is not afraid to have an unhappy ending. I gave this a 4.25 stars out of 5. And it is also worth noting that this is also still currently a book that is banned and challenged in the US and formed part of my banned books reads for this year. The last of my new releases from March is up next. This is Hyo the Hellmaker by Mina, Ikemoto, Ghosh. This is a Japanese-inspired fantastical mystery story that is one of the most beautiful books I've bought this year, and one I've not seen many people talking about. I have a full review up for this one. The basic gist of this is Hyo is a Hellmaker and is dispatched to the land of the gods, where the gods live amongst people, to discover whether a forbidden fruit is being grown there. Whilst there, she also finds out that one of her friends, who she has met previously, who lives in this area, has been cursed, and has to unravel, first of all, the reason for the curse and how it pertains to the growing of this forbidden fruit. This is an absolutely beautiful story with amazing world building that is well worth checking out. I've not seen many people talking about this one either, but there's some stunning artwork in this which is worth checking out just for that. I gave this one a 4.25 stars out of 5. Day of the West is up next. This is an indie novel written by Dani Finn. This is an April release. This came out on the 25th. And this novella comes in at under 100 pages long and is book one of a new series called The Scrublands. This is, in essence, a treasure hunt with two best friends going off into a potentially dangerous situation to discover some hidden treasure. However, when they get there, the treasure they discover is actually far more valuable than something physical. At its core, this is a story of self-discovery and self-acceptance, and I also love the fact that you have two best friends here with no hints of romance between them. Well worth a check out. I'm looking forward to seeing where this series goes. That's Day of the West by Dani Finn. In case you don't know, I am from Manchester in the UK. So the next book is one that I picked up simply because it covers pretty much the city that I live in. This is Tales from the Dancefloor. This is written by Sacha Lord with Luke Bainbridge and is narrated by Sacha himself, and I believe this is only currently available on audiobook. This came out on April the 11th of this year, and it is basically Sacha's biography up to this point in his life, mainly focused on his time within the music industry, specifically around club and event promoting, especially around Manchester where he's from. This looks a little bit at Manchester's music heritage and some of the challenges that he has faced while setting up things like the iconic Warehouse project, as well as the Park Life Festival here in Manchester. It takes an interesting look at some of the legally dubious things that have occurred in the industry over the years and looks at the difference in terms of the relationship with the police and the effects of gang warfare on the club scene, as well as looking at some of the more iconic venues like the Manchester Hacienda and some of the key players within the Manchester music industry and the effect that that has had on the world in general. This is a very specific book, so I wouldn't say this is one for everyone, but on saying that, if you're interested in music or Manchester history in general, this is well worth picking up to give it a listen to. We round off the month with another indie title, a Necromancer called Gam Gam by Adam Holcombe. This was a one-sitting read for me and is surprisingly emotionally investing for the short page time. I think it comes in at 110 pages. When an elderly necromancer called Gam Gam takes in a young girl on the run, it becomes clear that the girl has some magic of her own, and then it becomes clear that so too does Gam Gam. You get a real grandmotherly sense of the relationship going on here, and this is surprisingly wholesome considering you have Necromancer in the title, and does a good job of subverting some tropes that you quite often get in magical fantasy in particular. I absolutely adored this. This was a great book to finish off my month's reading with. Highly recommend giving this one a check out as well. That's a Necromancer called Gam Gam by Adam Holcombe. There are, I believe, going to be follow-ups to this, so I'm looking forward to those as well. So there we go. That is my reading wrap-up for April 2024. A far more mixed month than previous months and a lot more in terms of non-fiction as well. What I would love to know is, what have you read during April? Are there any recommendations that you've got for me that you'd like me to check out at some point? If you do, let me know in the comments down below, and I will catch you all very soon.